there's two kinds of contractors, those that want to get the job and those that want to do the job. So those that want to get the job are going to tell you what you want to hear. Oh, yes, we can do that. What's really a 6-month project. Oh, yeah, we can get it done in 3 months. Or they can see that the plans aren't very specific and detailed, and they give you a quote, knowing that they're going to charge you later. Lots of change orders are going to come into hand, versus the ones that want to do the job or going to bid realistically, maybe make suggestions or let you know that we need some more information here before we can give you a bid. And more importantly, they are going to literally put a schedule together.
Right.
Using the critical path method in terms of there's certain tasks that have to take place before the project can move forward.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. So I have Monica D. Higgins with me. Now, notice the D, it's an important part. When you look up Monica, you want to make sure you get the Monica D, the real one. Monica D. Higgins, the only Monica D. Higgins you want to talk to is this one right here.
That's
and
right.
I'm so lucky I have her on my show. Thank you, Monica. So I'm going to share a little bit about her bio, and then we are going to rock this show forward. All right. So Monica has, I love this title, by the way. Monica's website is Garagify. I think that is great. I don't know how you came up with that title, and I will let you explain it later. But right now, let's give you just a hair. There it is, Garagify. Backyard homes built better. Plan, design, permit, build. Garagify is your end-to-end designer and build partner. I love that. That alone describes what it is, but we're going to ask more. So here's the story. So growing up, Monica helped her parents manage and renovate distressed income properties. She also witnessed her mother get ripped off big time by a shady contractor. I know several people who have talked to me about running into contractors they've had problems with. If you've had problems with a contractor, put it below in the comment box, because we all gain when we share our stories. We gain greater knowledge and success in moving forward by understanding what has not worked in the past. So being ripped off big time by shady contractors, something no homeowner should ever have to experience. That horrific ordeal inspired her to become a construction manager and write Remodel Success, an international bestseller. Monica D. Higgins, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Christina, for having me. Love it.
It's great to have you here. So Monica, I love Garagify. I want to find out about that, but I also want to find out, so how did you get into real estate and construction management based on your parents not having a good time? So explain this to me.
Okay, so I've been in real estate because when I was growing up, my parents owned apartment buildings. Okay. So in terms of the construction piece, a tenant moves out, you rehab the unit, put a new tenant in. And then the year after my father died, my mother got taken by a contractor, and I was scratching my head like, how did this happen to her? Because I grew up with this. It's because my dad took care of everything, and he negotiated everything, did the selection, and she was on her own, did what most people do. I found out this later. She didn't ask the right questions. She didn't do the right steps in the right order, and she got caught. And as a result of that, I started thinking about how could people avoid it? And that's how the book Remodel Success was birthed. Literally took 9 months to write.
Congratulations. That's a perfect timeline.
Yes.
So you've been doing this for how long? And give us an idea of how, like, I read people have a sense because I read it. I mean, you're like, soup to nuts from beginning to end, but yes. Let's expand on that. So how long have you been doing this, and how did you get to this particular unique model?
Okay. So I've been in the construction industry as a construction manager for nearly 20 years. And I was inspired because of my mother's experience. I actually got certified as a construction manager at UCLA. And what I noticed sitting in the program was I had a lot of people in my class that were from the commercial sector, not the residential sector. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, well, all of these great learnings and best practices that I didn't see on the residential side, I wanted to bring that to the residential side. So that's how I got into the space. As far as accessory dwelling units, ADUs, or I like to call them backyard homes, The laws changed in 2017. People were doing it before, but they were doing it illegally, unpermitted. But then the state said, you know what? We have a housing problem. Here's one way that homeowners and investors can actually help us with that, with one ADU at a time. That's how I got into it.
And you do seem to have created a whole model. Like when I talked to you on the phone, I was a little like, do you take a piece of your model apart and do this versus that? And you're like, no, it's a model. It's a complete process. So describe to us the completeness of the process. Because we talked about how there's certain pieces, like you don't want to change out this horse midstream. You want to miss that. This process works together. So,
yes.
So explain it. And I know you do a survey, and you not a survey is the wrong word, but a study. And so
yes.
fill us in. So
typically, whether it's homeowners or investors, they're trying to figure out, is doing this even right for me? So we put together a backyard home investment report that helps them answer 3 questions, like how much would this project cost? What's the return on investment? And also things such as what are the types of projects that I could be doing on my particular property? And then from there, we have a discovery call to learn more about them and their project. And depending on if they're going to do something that's in the backyard, we do a feasibility study so we could show them the footprint and the size of the structure, what it would be like in their backyard. And we put some numbers against that because, you know, everybody wants to know what it cost, rightly so. And then we also let them know if there's any things that they need to look out for. So for example, if we have to get a deal with a public utility company and go through the easement process, encroachment process, we tell them about that. If it's brand new construction from the ground up, well, they're going to have solar panels because that's mandated as of January 1st of 2020. We want to make sure that they put that into their budget. And then we do the design of the structure. So we present them with 3 floor plans. They pick one, we tweak it a little bit to their liking, and then we take them all the way to getting their permits. And then from there, we actually build the unit.
And you actually oversee the building of the unit as well as use your crew.
That's correct. That is correct. We have a team of construction managers that are project managers that actually are with you every step of the way. And we actually manage our projects via an app. So you have fingertip access to your projects.
See, now we talked about how, I teased about it at the beginning about how contractors can truly be difficult to work with, and they really can. I've had 3 phone calls in the last month with people asking me how to work with the contractor that was not successfully working for them. And so what are some of the things that you've put in place, obviously previous to Garagify it, but as a project manager?
Yes.
When you were just a project manager and you did not work with your own crew and therefore had control over the crew, what were some of the things that you put in place, or some examples of what you would look for in order to really qualify a contractor?
Well, before starting Garagify, I actually have a construction management company, and we did a lot of contractor screenings. I can say that probably less than 10% of the contractors that I've interviewed over the years would sort of pass our muster. And it's really about asking the critical questions. When things are going great, that's not a problem. But when things aren't going according to plan, you want to ask questions in terms of their problem solving skills. How do they get things back on track? Check their references. And granted, most people they're not going to give you a bad reference. So, but ask open-ended questions from their references, because that can help you figure out how they handle situations. Whether or not they're even the right fit. I find so many people, they have this gut feeling like this is not the right person, and yet they still work with them. Follow your gut. Your intuition is there for a reason. So follow it.
That makes sense. So are you looking more for, so it sounds like you're not looking just for their license being in place, insurance being in place, that type of stuff. You're also looking for what's their problem solving skill, what have they done in the past to solve a problem of some kind?
Their communication style.
Okay.
So for example, as a woman in construction, I hear this from a lot of females, whether investors or homeowners. If the contractor is talking at them and talking down at them, that's probably not the person that you want to work with, because that's going to be what the relationship is going to be like throughout the process. You'd rather talk to someone that values your input, that's not going to cut you off. Maybe you prefer to have text and email, though with our with the app that we use, everything comes through the app, all the communication, but some people rather have phone calls versus text. So you need to find what you feel comfortable with in terms of your communication style and whether or not that contractor aligns with that. What's their, they have technical, you have to look at their communication style, look at them from a technical perspective, build quality, because not everybody builds the same. There's a lot of shoddy work out there. That's not what you want. You want to have something solid, but you also have to be willing to pay for the solid work. And I think that's where people get into this conundrum because they're trying to get the lowest price. And typically the lowest price isn't going to give you the highest quality or even the best quality or mid-range quality.
Yes. I've actually had a client that was a contractor. I know normally I work with investors in my mentorship program, but I actually had a client that was recommended to me by another client. It was a contractor and we were working on his small business model because that's where I started 20 plus years ago, was a small business management consultant. And so here was a contractor talking to me as a business consultant and my expertise is in real estate. So it worked well, right? But the point is that when I looked at his margin, right, his like charging a 5 or 10% management fee, I'm like, dude,
not enough.
Exactly. So you do the numbers and it's like, that is not enough. Like the amount of times he's running from store to store to pick up goods, the amount of time he's spending overseeing his crew, he's counting for all of the hard costs, all the materials and direct labor. But I'm like, you've got a truck to pay for, you've got insurance to pay for, you've got your own like feeding yourself to pay for, not to mention maybe feeding a child or two. Like the 5 to 10% is so not enough to cover the GC. Right. So it's hard because when you come to a contractor, you always have this concept of like, well, gee, I'm putting out whether it's $20,000 or $200,000 on your project. You're putting out a lot of money to get what you're trying to get. And there's so many contractors that when I listen to their model, I look at their bids, I'm like, I happen to know because I've had a contractor as a client, you're not making enough money for this project to be a priority for you or any project to be a priority for you because you're underpricing yourself in every single project.
Yes. And then so on the flip side is that the client runs the risk of them not completing the job or taking on several other projects because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul just to get it done.
Yes, because that's my next question is, how do you manage timelines? Because usually demo goes great, not a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Now everything's out of there. And now you have to finish construction for it to be a usable piece of property again. They start something and then halfway through, if you're lucky, it'll be halfway through or two, they start to peter away. And then the timeline gets longer and longer and longer. How do you account for that? How do you set up for success from the beginning and account for it maybe on some level of the contracts or something like that?
Right.
So talk to me about that.
So think of contractors in two different buckets. There's two kinds of contractors, those that want to get the job and those that want to do the job. So those that want to get the job are going to tell you what you want to hear. Oh, yes, we can do that. What's really a 6-month project. Oh, yeah, we can get it done in 3 months. Or, yeah, they can see that the plans aren't very specific and detailed and they give you a quote knowing that they're going to charge you later, lots of change orders are going to come into hand versus the ones that want to do the job or going to bid realistically, maybe make suggestions or let you know that we need some more information here before we can give you a bid. And more importantly, they are going to literally put a schedule together.
Right.
Using the critical path method in terms of there's certain tasks that have to take place before the project can move forward. So recognizing those two kinds of contractors will help you a lot for starters.
And then do you do anything about, I agree. I call them my rough contractors and my finished contractors, which is probably actually a bad term because rough contractors actually means rough work and finished contractor literally means finished work, right?
Yes.
Like drywall being finished work versus rough work being like framing.
Yeah.
So it's probably not good, but I have on my recent projects, I ended up having I had my my guy who had 20 change orders at the end, but got everything done really quick. And he had like two teams in there at any point in time. And the guy who absolutely had a complete schedule all set, everything worked out, but had one crew in there at a time. And because he didn't want his crew stepping on each other. And when you're holding up relatively large projects at literally $500 a day,
right,
it becomes this conversation about like, well, which one do I really want? And how soon can I get my job done? Because I'm under a certain amount of financial pressure to make it perform. But I also, like you said, I need a contractor that understands the critical path in order to actually finish on time.
Well, you brought up a good point in regards to resources. So you can get projects done more quickly if you have more resources. So the question is, A, is it worth it to you to pay extra for that additional manpower on the site? So I think of, everybody's watched the TV show Extreme Makeovers Home Edition. I mean, the reason that they can get a project done in a week is, have you seen how many people are on the job site?
Yes, and I've never had a crew that big on any of my job sites ever.
So
ever.
That's how they can get it done,
right,
in a short period of time, because they literally have all hands on deck.
Right. Yes. So do you ever use the contract or performance clauses in your contracts to get performance? So that, like, you know, you set up a timeline, they agree to be done on that timeline, you add extra time, and then you put in a penalty clause or reward for them getting done early, or a penalty for them getting done late. Do you ever use that paragraph?
I personally haven't used it, but I'm certainly aware of it. In light of COVID, I probably wouldn't use it because there's a lot of things that are out of our control. I mean, just to give you an example, at the beginning of COVID, we could call for an inspection and they would come out within, 48 hours. And then we got to a point where it would take 7 to 10 days before the inspector could come out. So I would be hard pressed to find a contractor that would be willing to put in that kind of clause in today's climate.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, and in Garagify, I think you have set up for success by working with your own contractor. Like, so you've preset that up.
Yeah, my years with my construction management firm, I've screened a lot of contractors. I still do screen contractors because it's like when you go to a doctor, there's a lot of doctors out there. So let's just say you're going to an eye surgeon. There's a lot of good eye surgeons, but who's the right eye surgeon to work with you? Look at it from the same lens as to say, who's going to be the right fit to work with my company and my clients? I still do. I'm always on the lookout. In order to scale the company, I need to have great teams. And I've looked at different ways to scale the company, whether it's my becoming the general contractor and having a pool of subs versus bringing on the good general contractors that already have the relationships with the subcontractors. I've even looked at hiring, because there's construction staffing agencies that have already screened contractors. I just have to look at the pros and cons of each model. But yes, I'm always on the lookout for good contractors. Okay,
and that makes sense. And that way you can serve your clients in a timely fashion, right? Because that's the whole purpose of having you be involved in their ADU and their Garagify it, which is funny to me. I had a gentleman at my last meeting 2 weeks ago before you and I had reconnected, who was saying, I want to do an ADU and I don't think I'm going to permit it. And I'm like, okay, dude, let me back you up here for a minute. Things to consider.
Yeah, so the legal liability, for one, if somebody got injured in the unit, and let's just say the electrical caught fire, they put an insurance claim, denied.
Right. That's one of them. Go ahead, go down the list. I know there's at least one more.
Oh, well, let's just say, if a tenant gets mad at you and it's not permitted, I've heard of them turning the owners in.
And they can refuse to pay rent.
Yes.
They can also get back rent for renting in an unpermitted space.
Right.
Yes.
So those are two big ones right there.
Well, and the third one to me is also, if I may add in, like when you go to sell the house, unpermitted space is not considered.
That's a phantom space. If it's not on the tax rolls, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. So literally when you list it, you cannot list the square footage of the ADU at all in the price of the property, and it makes it harder to sell. People are like, what do you mean you want to charge me an extra $50 a square foot? Well, that's because I have a whole ADU back here. It's like, well,
doesn't matter. We don't see it here.
Don't see it. Not permitted. It means nothing. It doesn't account in appraisals either.
No.
You're looking to get an appraisal in order for somebody to purchase your house. The ADU does not count as square footage as far as the appraisal. So
And you go to those open houses and it says bonus room not permitted, ADU not permitted.
That's right. That's what,
Yep.
because you have to call it out, because otherwise people are like, I don't understand what's going on here.
Right.
Right. So you got to call it. So let's transition a little bit. Right.
Okay.
I think people get a sense for, actually one last thing. What is the area that Garagify works in? Because if this being a podcast and
Sure.
on YouTube, it's going to be in multiple places across the United States. People are going to be
Sure.
listening. And I don't think you're in Philadelphia.
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, I love that answer. I love that answer. Not
yet.
yet, lady.
So
All
we're
right,
currently in the greater Los Angeles area
Great,
and
great.
within 1 hour of Culver City.
Perfect. That's a
Yeah.
great answer. I, of course, was trying to find out from you, like, hey, would you come do my house? Like, that's it. But no, she doesn't project manage by herself anymore. Just so you know, she likes using her own contractor. It's A to use. This lady is the Garagify lady. Okay. So that being said, let's move to the next piece of the show. So after, my listeners who've been listening to me maybe too many times know that in my 35 years of doing real estate,
Yeah.
I have run into some tough stories. I have lost money. I have made money. I've lost money again. I've made money again. I have truly had real estate challenge me and grow me up. It has made me a better, stronger human being, and more appreciative and more disciplined, more diligent. Let's call it diligent.
Okay.
So tell us one of the stories, like you've in your history, in your, project management and garagifying, you clearly have run into some complicated situations. So tell us one of your worst complicated situations you did for a client.
Yeah. So I was actually brought into a project by the client's estate planning attorney.
Not surprised.
Just let me set the stage.
Please.
So the husband had probably literally interviewed, and I'm not lying because I've seen the spreadsheet, like 30 companies to do, they did an ADU and they did a remodel.
Okay.
And the ADU was done and I was brought in to sort of get the project back on track because it had fallen way back off the rails. About 6 weeks after the project had started, the husband passed away. He had a heart attack.
Oh.
So the wife didn't know. Yeah, it was just like, oh my God, like I can't even imagine going through something like that.
Right.
And going through home improvement projects is stressful enough because it's not something that people do every day. But then having to go through that grief at the same time, I can just only imagine like her stress levels must have been through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was brought in to sort of help them figure out like where were the payments in terms of the work.
Okay.
And I did a forensics. I mean, I looked at all the payments, the contract, and the short story is that it was 75% paid, 45% done. And the way that the contract was written is that the contractor would get paid to start a phase of something
versus at the finish of the phase.
Versus finish it. So there was no incentive to finish. And the client thought that the project would be done by the end of the year, just in time for the holidays, the new year, new house, and this is November, and I'm just discovering that, well, that can't happen because the custom cabinets haven't been ordered.
Right.
So getting things back on track took a while, just the forensics of doing all the research and looking through all the transactions and kind of where we were in the process, having several conversations with the contractor, and quite frankly, he was a bully to her as well. So calling him out on that. And she was so far in that it didn't make sense for her to fire him because she was so far in. He at least, if you're going to do that, catch up and then you can make the decision. But my guidance to her was to at least get caught up with the work. Should you decide to fire him, which was not what I was recommending, just to get it done. But that was a very stressful experience, even for me.
Well, what were some of the problem? I mean, you described the problem, you set the stage. So what were some of the solutions? So it was get him to finish the work, but how do you do that? Like in reality?
So the reality is, well, first of all, calling out that, hey, you've gotten all this money, but we don't see the work that matches what's in the contract. Well, it says I can get paid at so-and-so, but we don't even see that you've done half of the work in this section. So making sure that the work caught up with the payments, that was the critical piece. Also getting the cabinets ordered. So let's sit down and looking at the kitchen design, the way that it was designed, like the sink was off-centered under the, the sink was off-centered under the window.
Right.
Who does that?
Yeah.
She was very adamant about some things. And I said, well, does this really make sense? But she needed to see it. Having 3D renderings really helps put things into context. So if people if you don't have an understanding of a two-dimensional drawing, which many people don't, I get challenged a lot of times myself, but if I could see the 3D version of that 2D drawing, and then I can say, oh, that's exactly what I said I wanted, or no, that's not what I want. It's so much more cost effective to make a change in a digital model than it is once you start construction, because that's going to be a series of unnecessary change orders. And that's how costs get out of hand. You're going to have the necessary ones, like you have a wall that's opened up and you've got, water leak or mold. Okay. But the ones that are unnecessary because you said one thing, but you meant something else, 3D renderings takes care of that.
So, I mean, because real estate is about problem solving. I mean, I think that's kind of the thing that maybe not everybody understands when they get into real estate. It's about numbers. It's about the house. It's about the structure. And it's like, yeah. And it's about problem solving. There's a lot of problems that needs to be solved in almost every real estate transaction I've been in. I was talking with Bruce Norris. I was at a meeting that Bruce Norris was giving. It was an economic update that Bruce Norris was giving. And somebody asked him, out of, when you buy houses, how many times do you have problems during escrow? And he said, you mean every time I buy a house? He's like, yeah. He says, well, about 19 out of 20. Right. So like 19 out of 20 escrows, and Bruce Norris has done over 2,000 houses. So you would think he has a pretty good capacity to, regulate and come to every transaction fully prepared. But he says, 19 out of 20 times there is something that is a surprise during escrow. So problem solving is huge.
But you brought up a really good point, is being prepared. So you still have to do your work to get prepared before you start a project.
Yeah.
Because even in construction, things don't go according to plan. I mean, we're working on an ADU in Culver City right now. And what the city signed off on versus what the inspector wanted to see were two different things with respect to a gray water system.
Right.
And he wanted to have us do something that was for a 500 square foot ADU didn't make sense. So bring in the plumber, they can talk shop because I don't talk plumbing.
Right.
And they got it resolved at a much more cost effective solution than what he had originally proposed.
Right. Ran into that with grading on a project. Oh, you need to put a whole like drain system behind the project that goes down each side, blah, blah, blah. And then got the GC in there, and they talk shop and they went, oh yeah, you can just grade this down to the retaining wall.
Right.
We just bend pipes that way. Okay, cool. That works. Much less expensive than what the inspector was suggesting. Like, really? No, please don't. Please don't. So that makes sense. So the problem solving and what you did was you had a clarifying conversation with the contractor. So everybody was now on the same page, having to do with what the stages of completion were. Sounds like you actually got rid of one of the bottlenecks, which is to pre-order, get those cabinets ordered so that bottleneck would be solved. And having 3D renderings put everybody much more on like, gee, this is really a good design. Now we really are much more clear. The lady who owned the property, right, was much more clear about, well, this is exactly what we need to have happen and why it needs to happen. So you brought solutions, right? Solutions to the problems that were happening. So when you go through this type of stuff, problem solving can be challenging. It can be, these things can be challenging mentally. But if you bring a solid mindset to it, because that's one of my hobbies, which I talk about on this show, is a solid mindset. So I think we talked earlier about success consciousness. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you bring that and what value it brings to your clients? This might seem weird to some people, like, why would your mindset bring value to your clients? But I'm going to suggest it does.
It does, because let's face it, when it comes to construction, most people have heard horror stories. They haven't heard delight stories. And it's because of how they set themselves up. So my whole goal and my team's whole goal is to set our clients up for success. We want them to finish what they start. And sometimes it's having conversations like, okay, your scope of work is this, but your budget is this. We need to realign the scope of the work to align with the budget so that you can get finished. So it's having those difficult conversations, but people appreciate it because when they get it done, they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy that we didn't go this other route because it would have been much more expensive. But it's also about when I speak with clients, don't hold back in terms of what you want. Put it all out there, because the worst thing that can happen is you go through a project and you regret it because what if? No what ifs. Let's put it out there. And if we can do it all, great. But if we can't, then we have to make some priorities, your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves.
Mhm.
But it's all about seeing that it can get done. It's just a matter of sometimes we have to refine the vision for them to align with their budget. And they appreciate the fact that we are going to help them do that so they can get to the finish line. Because the finish line for them, 80% of the people I talk to are building ADUs to generate passive income.
Mhm.
So having something that they can afford that's going to generate passive income for them, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I, having I think laying it out, what people want, what people need. If they don't lay it out, then they never know until they start working with you, that maybe some of their wants actually kind of tuck right in under their needs quite well.
Yep.
Right? Like a laundry table. I know it sounds really weird, but we were just looking at our house and possibly redoing the interior of our house. And it was like, hey, guess what? This little space that seems relatively empty, we could just put a flat surface there and you've got a folding table. Like,
there you go.
And it didn't cost anything. It wasn't like we had to reshape a wall to do it. And so what may have seemed like it was too difficult to fit in, because it's all out and it's all known, there's a greater chance of getting what everybody both needs and potentially wants.
Right.
So being able to open up to doing that, to visioning and to seeing there may be something more. Right. So more successful project at the end. So financial freedom. So we talked earlier, I asked you about financial freedom, and I wanted you to share with me, what does financial freedom mean to you? Because it's different for everybody, I've noticed.
Financial freedom for me, financial wealth is freedom in terms of you're working because you want to, not because you have to. There is a different mindset because of your flow, because you're doing it because you want to, versus like, oh, I gotta do this. So that's what it means for me. Okay.
So it means because you want to.
Yes.
Not because you have to.
Yep.
I'm a great believer that that financial freedom for me allows me to even rest more fully in my sense of purpose.
Yes, yes. And fulfilling your purpose is really, really important. For me, being in or working in my purpose, because I'm doing what I was here put on the earth to do, which is to help people achieve success with their projects. Whatever that means to them, I'm there to be the conduit to help that happen for them.
Okay.
But the purpose for me, it's like you're in a state of flow, and it's very gratifying, and it energizes you. It energizes you.
Yes, that's my experience as well. I feel very energized at the end of the day, because I've been in the flow and at will, like I've been wanting to be there, right? There's a desire to show up. It's so much easier than, oh man, you mean I have to show up because I'm stuck in this conversation called I have to financially X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Right. Versus, no, I've got it. This is one of my favorite examples about financial freedom. I have a client, doesn't have a lot of money, be completely honest. Airbnb is part of her residence. And that's her financial freedom. She doesn't work.
Oh, nice.
And she lives in Los Angeles, right, in the greater Los Angeles area. She actually doesn't own her residence, but she lives on $2,000 a month.
Wow.
And she is free. She doesn't have to work.
Yep.
She can walk on, she can walk to the beach when she wants to. She can choose to do extra work if she wants to that month or not, but her renting out of her Airbnb inside of her residence, which is allowed to do in Southern California, you can rent out a piece of your residence, even if you rent it, allows her enough money that to her, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. So just as a way of putting it out there, financial freedom doesn't have to be $200,000 a year.
No.
It could be $2,000 a month, and you could find peace in that, because freedom's so important. She's
created her own lifestyle business, basically, is what it is.
Yeah, for herself.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So if people want to get a hold of the gracious and wonderful Monica D. Higgins, how do they get a hold of you and be able to do Garagify and use your company to add an ADU that works inside of their life?
Well, if they visit garagify.com, there is a contact us, and you can either schedule a project discovery call. You can call us or you can email us. So if you click on the contact us to the far right.
There you go.
Yep.
And Garagify is Garagify.
Yes. That it is.
That it is. And there's your phone number, 1-800-944-4024. And they can also email you. Hello, I like that. Hello at garagifynow.com.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Monica, for your time. This has been fantastic.
You.
When we ran into each other on that phone call, I was like, okay, I got to invite this lady because you have a business model not everybody has. And when there's something truly unique in the industry, I want to make sure I bring that in front of my listeners so they can get a sense for it. So this is perfect. So Monica D. Higgins with garagifynow.com. My name is Christina Suter with Real Estate Breakthrough Show. I am so excited to have you guys here every week. Every Monday, we release a speaker. Every Friday, we release an educational segment. Make sure and check me out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and Roku TV. And I think a variety of other platforms, but those are the ones I remember. See you next week.
Bye.